Let's talk subcompacts, not a frequent topic here on the old show, and the reason why, at least for me, is design. You see, people, they're kind of the same size, so the inside of a subcompact is usually close to the size of a compact, or even a midsize for that matter. However, the exterior of the car, that's where they try to shrink everything and make the car cheaper, which is really the point of a vehicle like this. But the design struggle is this. Most car manufacturers try to take the lovely proportions of their larger cars and graft them onto their subcompact cars. Not easy to do because the cars just look stubby. This is one of the better interpretations of proportions on a smaller car. But I am not here to tell you what you can see, so think of this as a bonus question. Do you think the design folks at Hyundai have been successful in grafting the design proportions of a Sonata or even Elantra onto their smallest, most efficient car on the market? And now let's get back to that efficiency. Under the hood is a gas direct-injected 4-cylinder 16-valve 1.6-liter engine that puts out 130 horsepower at a very aggressive engine speed of 6,300 RPM, and more important to us, 119 pounds of torque at a mildly aggressive 4,850 RPM. Now, two very interesting things to point out in a rather inexpensive car. Number one is the construction of the engine. The block and the head, both aluminum. And number two, the transmission. It's anything you want as long as it's 6-speed. It's on offer with a manual and an automatic. Of course, sadly, the manual is only on offer in the most basic model, so no fancy trim or sunroof. But what's interesting to point out about this transmission, like that 7-speed dual clutch that we've seen in other Hyundai and Kia products, both of these 6-speed transmissions, the manual and automatic, are also manufactured in-house by Hyundai. So you and I have been inside a lot of Hyundais and Kias over the past couple of years, and they have done an amazing job with their UX. And it's not just the stuff in the menus and 5 or 7-inch screens, which is on offer here. It's the buttons. They're big, they're legibly marked, and they're buttons. It's not haptic feedback, thank you very much. But the thing I'm most excited about is there are real knobs. There's a volume for the radio in all Hyundais and Kias. That makes its way down even to the cheapest Hyundai. And I hate to use the kind of, there's no other way to put it, bullshit bingo term of democratization, but that's what's happened here. All the switchgear that we see in other Hyundais that are more expensive, even Genesis, are kind of the same here. The only thing, if I'm honest, that I see here that I'm not loving is there's a hell of a lot of plastic on the top of the dash, but then again, you get what you pay for. Back here, this is where we need to focus. I have the seat exactly where I would sit, and would I go cross-country here? Probably not, but this is incredibly comfortable. But not to be too pedantic here, the U.S. government, they see this somewhat differently, and who knows, maybe other governments do as well, I just don't know which ones. The U.S. government, they certify this as a compact, not a subcompact, so it's a whole size class bigger, which is why this works. Then there are some toys that it has back here and some toys that it doesn't have. Like, for example, there is a USB plug down there so you can plug your phone in. Granted, it doesn't control the data, you can't play your music from the back, only from the front. And then it doesn't have an armrest, although I found a workaround. So there's this handy switch here, and you put this thing down here, and you get this very long, like oversized armrest. However, something tells me the Hyundai product planners didn't set out to make it work like this. There probably is another purpose, but I don't know what it is. Okay, so now that we've covered that, let's press on to some of the things that impact the driving dynamics. The front suspension is a twin-tube McPherson strut. The rear suspension, not surprisingly, is a torsion beam with coil springs. Now, there is a bit of a surprise here, especially considering the segment, and that's the brakes. Most cars in this segment, they have disc brakes in the front, but to cut costs, they usually do drums in the rear. Well, this is on offer in 3 different trim levels, and in those 2 top trim levels, the rear brakes go from drum to discs. Covering those are either 15-inch wheels on the base car with the manual transmission, and this fancy-dancy blue Limited here makes do with the 17-inch wheels. Now the part that makes a subcompact. The wheelbase is 101.6 inches, the length is 172.6 inches, and the width is 68.1. As a basis of comparison, a Hyundai Elantra compact car, that's got a 106-inch wheelbase. Now that's all fine and good, but how does that impact the weight? But before we talk about the weight, we need to talk about construction. And I know I've told you in many previous Hyundai and Kia episodes that they're not really just a car company, They're really a steel company masquerading as a car company, which gives Hyundai a very unique competitive advantage of being able to make a very inexpensive car like this from very expensive materials. So in this specific case, 54.5% of the entire car is made out of high-strength steel, which has two benefits. It's lighter than regular steel, and it's stronger. So the overall torsional rigidity of the 2018 Accent is now 32% stronger than the 2017 Accent. Okay, so without further ado, this is a bit of a lightweight. With a manual transmission, 2,502 pounds. With an automatic, it adds an additional 177 pounds. As a basis of comparison, that is at least 300 pounds lighter than an Elantra. If you remember last year, we came to Vegas to drive the then new Elantra Sport, the sedan, and then over the summer we drove that Elantra GT, which is the i30 over in Europe. Well, they sell that also as a fancy model, the N edition, which is like 260 horsepower. It's like super cool. It's front-wheel drive only, but it's super cool. I tried to get one on my last trip to Europe, but sadly they only offered me a diesel. Anyway, they brought the car that I wanted here. Granted, this is the racing model, but still cool. So my question is this. We're not going to talk about an Accent anymore. We're going to talk about this. And we'll talk about the Accent in a coming full first drive review. We're going to drive it to some cool places in the Valley of Fire. Stunning park. I mean, absolutely one of the most picturesque places. And then we're going to end up in Lake Mead. That's a cliffhanger for the episode. Anyway, here, my question is this. This is a 260 horsepower front-wheel drive sedan, kind of in the vein of like a Golf R, that kind of stuff. Now, they don't bring it over to the U.S., and they're talking about bringing the Veloster N edition over to the U.S. But here's the all-important question. Would you actually write the check for a high-performance version of an Elantra GT Sport, or even an Elantra Sport, meaning the four-door sedan? Would you write the check? How much would you write the check for, meaning performance edition? And most importantly, what car do you currently drive? Basically, you can see what I'm looking for. People who drive GTIs, Golf Rs, that kind of stuff. Let me know in the comments below or via social media, MotoManTV all word, MotoManTV all word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I'm kind of sitting on the floor at SEMA, so I'm going to stand up. I'm going to go check out some other cool cars, some Crate Motors. There's even a cool Richard Petty golf car here. So I'm going to go investigate. And until I'll see you next time, bis später.